Gun rights are at the forefront of discussion today as the U.S. Supreme Court issues a major ruling.
For 4 years, California has banned open carry in counties with populations over 200,000 people.
It is unconstitutional to restrict someone's rights based on the size of the place that they live, the city or county that they live in.
Open carry has historically been regulated. The U.S. Supreme Court has said those types of regulations would be improper.
A landmark decision, a federal court ruled that California cannot ban its citizens from openly carrying guns in public.
So a federal appeals court just told California that banning open carry is unconstitutional.
A federal court just dropped a bombshell on California, and the shockwaves are rattling every politician from Sacramento to San Diego. What happened in that courtroom changes everything about how Americans can exercise their constitutional rights, and the implications go way deeper than anyone's talking about. Here's what went down. A federal appeals court just declared California's ban on open carry unconstitutional. Now, if you're sitting there thinking this sounds like some alternate reality scenario, you're not alone. California treating the Second Amendment like an actual constitutional right, that's about as likely as finding affordable housing in San Francisco. But here we are, living in unprecedented times where federal judges are actually reading the Constitution and applying it as written. The law in question would have banned open carry in any California county with more than 200,000 people. That's basically every major population center in the state. But here's where it gets interesting. The judge who struck this down was appointed by Donald Trump, and he based his ruling on a Supreme Court precedent that requires any firearm restriction to be consistent with America's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Let me break down why that specific legal standard matters so much. What the court is essentially saying is that you can't just wake up one morning, decide guns make you uncomfortable, and then legislate that feeling into law. You can't ban constitutional rights because seeing a holster at your local coffee shop triggers your anxiety. If you want to restrict a fundamental right, you need to show that similar restrictions existed when the Constitution was written and throughout American history. Not modern interpretations, not California's unique take on things, not "this makes me nervous" justifications. Actual historical precedent.
All right, we've got this breaking news just coming into our newsroom right now. The Supreme Court has issued a ruling.
Tonight, a federal appeals court says the state law banning the open carry of firearms is unconstitutional.
The Supreme Court just came down with its biggest Second Amendment ruling in more than a decade.
I know that sentence sounds fake, but apparently miracles do still happen in federal court.
My question is to the state of California and to the court, do we have enumerated rights or don't we?
Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, let me be crystal clear about something. I don't personally open carry. It's not part of my daily routine, and I don't plan to change that. But here's the thing. Rights aren't just rights when they align with your personal preferences. That's not how constitutional protections work. You don't get to pick and choose which rights matter based on whether you personally exercise them. California's Attorney General Rob Bonta immediately responded with a statement saying they're considering their options and remain committed to defending what they call common sense gun laws. But here's where the logic completely falls apart, and this is what drives me crazy about the anti-gun position on open carry. If you genuinely believe that more guns equal more danger, then logically you should be more concerned about concealed carry than open carry. Think about it. With concealed carry, you have no idea who's armed. That person next to you at the grocery store, they could be carrying. The person sitting behind you at the movie theater, also potentially armed. You literally cannot see the guns, which means you can't make informed decisions about your surroundings. But with open carry, everything is visible. You can see exactly who has a firearm, where it is, and make whatever choices you feel are necessary for your comfort level. Don't like being around guns? With open carry, you can spot them immediately and leave if you want. It's the most transparent form of carry possible. So what's really going on here? The opposition to open carry isn't actually about safety, it's about comfort. It's about not wanting to be reminded that we live in a country where citizens have the right to bear arms. It's about maintaining the illusion that guns don't exist in polite society, even though statistically you're surrounded by concealed carriers every single day and don't even know it. This brings me to something personal. You might notice I wear certain branded items, hats, shirts, drinkware, with a particular term on them, amosexual. People ask me about it all the time, and there's actually a fascinating story behind it. About 15 to 20 years ago, anti-gun activists started using amosexual as an insult. They'd mock gun owners by calling us amosexuals, trying to make it sound like something deviant or wrong. The irony is thick here. The same crowd that preaches tolerance and acceptance somehow can't resist linking gun ownership to sexuality and making crude implications about compensation. They frame our interest in firearms as some kind of perverse obsession, which is both intellectually dishonest and surprisingly intolerant for people who claim to champion acceptance. But here's the thing, I do love guns. Not in some weird way, but in the same way car enthusiasts love cars or musicians love instruments. Firearms are mechanically fascinating, historically significant, and yes, incredibly fun to shoot. They're tools that require skill, discipline, and respect. The precision engineering, the physics involved, the focus required to shoot accurately, it's all genuinely enjoyable. So when they tried to insult us by calling us homosexuals, we decided to own it. Why let them weaponize a word against us? If loving the tools that protect our families makes us homosexuals, then fine. We'll wear it with pride. That's why I created merchandise with the term. It's about taking back the narrative and refusing to be shamed for exercising constitutional rights.
It's not the gun owner, it's not the pistol permit holders, it's the criminals that are causing the violence and the gun problem.
That seems like guilty until proven innocent. That's not within the lawful jurisdiction of a government.
If you're going to restrict a constitutional right, it has to be consistent with the nation's historical traditions of firearm regulation.
The state declares all the citizens of California as criminals unless they prove otherwise.
California's relationship with open carry has a particularly ugly history that most people don't know about. The state's gun control push didn't start with noble intentions of public safety. It started with racism when the Black Panthers began legally carrying firearms to monitor police activities in their communities. Suddenly, California Republicans, led by Assemblyman Don Mulford, decided that open carry was a problem that needed immediate legislative attention. That's right. California's gun control legacy is rooted in trying to disarm Black Americans who were legally exercising their rights. The Mulford Act, signed by then-Governor Ronald Reagan, specifically targeted the Black Panthers' practice of armed self-defense. This historical context makes the current ruling even more significant because it's essentially saying that laws born from discriminatory intent don't get to stand just because they've been on the books for decades. Modern open carry looks nothing like the Wild West scenarios that gun control advocates imagine. It's not about showdowns at high noon or intimidation tactics. In reality, it's usually just regular people going about their regular lives, buying groceries, pumping gas, walking their dogs, who happen to have a visible firearm and a proper holster. When I see someone open carrying, my first thought isn't fear or alarm. It's curiosity about their setup. What kind of holster are they using? What firearm did they choose? It's like seeing someone with a nice watch or an interesting car. You notice the choices they made and move on with your day. There's also a gender equality issue here that nobody talks about. Women's clothing often isn't designed for concealed carry. Many outfits don't work with traditional belt holsters, and alternative carry methods can be less accessible or comfortable. Purse carry, while common, isn't ideal from a retention standpoint, so when you ban open carry, you're effectively limiting women's practical options for self-defense. How is that progressive? The tactical considerations around open carry versus concealed carry are worth discussing too. Personally, I prefer concealed carry for tactical reasons. If I'm openly displaying a firearm and something bad happens, I've immediately identified myself as someone the threat needs to neutralize first. I lose the element of surprise and potentially make myself a primary target. But other people see it differently. They believe open carry serves as a deterrent, potentially stopping crimes before they start. Both perspectives are valid, and that's exactly why both options should be legal. What makes this ruling particularly significant is that it's part of a larger trend. Federal courts are increasingly applying strict scrutiny to gun laws, demanding actual constitutional justification rather than accepting emotional arguments. The days of passing sweeping gun restrictions based on fear and feelings appear to be numbered, at least in jurisdictions where judges actually read and apply the Constitution. The response from California's political establishment has been predictably tone-deaf. They talk about defending common-sense gun laws, but there's nothing common sense about criminalizing the open exercise of a constitutional right. If we applied their logic to other rights, we'd ban public speeches because they might offend someone or require permits for practicing religion because someone might feel uncomfortable seeing public displays of faith. This ruling matters because it reinforces a fundamental principle. Rights exist whether or not the government likes them. They exist whether or not your neighbors approve. They exist whether or not they make some people uncomfortable. That's what makes them rights rather than privileges, and that's what separates America from countries where the government decides which freedoms you're allowed to exercise. The practical implications of this ruling extend beyond just California. Other states with similar restrictions are now on notice that their laws might not survive constitutional scrutiny. The legal precedent being established here could reshape how courts evaluate gun laws nationwide, potentially striking down numerous restrictions that can't be justified by historical tradition. For California gun owners, this represents a significant victory, even for those who never planned to open carry. It's validation that their rights matter, that the Constitution applies even in states hostile to gun ownership, and that federal courts will step in when states go too far in restricting fundamental freedoms. The technology platforms and political establishments don't want content like this reaching you. They'd prefer you only hear one side of the gun debate, the side that frames every firearm as a threat and every gun owner as a potential danger. But we're fighting back against that narrative suppression. You can help by engaging with this content, sharing it with others who need to hear it, and refusing to let your rights be eroded by those who would prefer you didn't have them. Remember, loving the tools that protect your life and family isn't something to be ashamed of. Whether you call yourself an amosexual or just a regular American exercising your rights, you're part of a community that values freedom, personal responsibility, and constitutional principles. This ruling is a reminder that those values still matter, even in places where politicians wish they didn't. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.